Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the middle split, and we show you our top 3 exercises to get you in a deeper middle split, and we show you the common mistakes while training for the middle split. So let's start with the first common mistake we usually see when we see people training for the middle split. So Leslie's going to demonstrate you one mistake. So usually people go onto a wall and just spread their leg, open up their legs in the widest straddle and just stay in there in the position, maybe even add on weight onto the ankles to get even deeper into the position. So that's only a passive stretch, right? That's not really a mistake, but it's only passive. Next mistake is kind of the same thing, but people usually hold on to a pole or to a box in front of them, and they just go onto the heels and get a stretch again here, again a passive stretch, and this might take some while, years, even longer. Maybe they don't even get to a middle split because it's only passive and they don't strengthen their muscles. They're only stretching their muscles, right? So that's where the active middle split comes into play. There's nothing wrong with these passive stretches, right? But it will take you through a lot of time, maybe a lot of frustration, or you won't even get to your result. So we recommend you training active. So active training is mobility training. We train our joints at the end ranges of our motion. Of course, in mobility training, there are passive components, passive stretching. It has its place, but if you want to achieve a really solid, strong middle split, we have to strengthen the muscles and joints involved in that position to really gain and have control in that position, and not only go down into the position, stay there for 5 or 10 seconds, and then painfully go out again. We don't want that. We want to have active control in these deep end ranges of motion.
So the first thing that we want to work on is internal rotation paired with some abduction. Why internal rotation? Because when you look at a middle split, you see mainly abduction, obviously, and you see abduction in this position, so you want to get up and you have a stretch in your adductors. So that's what most people see, that it is a linear movement. That's correct, but since you're going into this inverted position of your ankle, you also have internal rotation of your hip involved with a pelvic tilt for the active split that we've demonstrated. So in order to work that, we have paired internal rotation with abduction as a passive range lift off in a 90-90 position. If this 90-90 position is uncomfortable for you, you can easily sit on a yoga block or a cushion to give you greater range of motion. So what you want to focus on, this is not a stretch, this is an active strength exercise for your joints. You want to go into a 90-90 position with your back as straight and vertical as possible, or your torso. The further you lean forward, the easier it is to get the lift off. And you have to determine your current level of mobility to get the lift off. So when you're in this position, you have a 90-degree angle in your rear knee, in your rear leg. And then from here, the first thing you want to do is you lift off your foot. Knee stays on the ground, you lift off the foot. That's internal rotation. And then from here, once you've found internal rotation, you lift off the knee. And that's when you have abduction. So now you go back down with the knee and you go back down with the foot. That's internal rotation with an abduction lift off. Really important for the lift off, you engage your core, you radiate, you stay strong. Deep breath in before you start. Brace yourself and then lift your foot off. Okay, so now you see there is a fairly big lift off. We don't want to be able to lift off like that. Okay, we only want a tiny lift off because that's when we know we work at the end range of motion. So I am gonna ask him to get a little bit more upright And I make sure that this part of his leg is not rotating or leaning forward. So from here, ask him lift off. See how little the lift off is now? From here, ask to lift off the knee, and we're in abduction, and down. Beautiful. Go for 6 reps on each side for a total of 2 to 3 sets.
So our next exercise is some frog, pails and rails. So let's go in a frog position here. Go in your widest frog here, so the knees as far apart from each other as possible. And from here, don't go forward as much. Try to have your knee and your hip in one line here. From here, try to get a deep stretching sensation. This time we have a passive stretch. Remember, I said it is a mistake to do these exercises. Of course, it is not a mistake. A passive component is obviously fairly important when it comes to flexibility and mobility, but it will take you some time if you only do a passive stretch. But this is a pails and rails. We have some isometric strength training components in these exercises, but before that, we have a 2-minute deep stretch. So let's imagine she stretched for 2 minutes in her deepest frog position here. And from here, we're gonna isometrically ramp up the pails contraction by pushing both knees as hard as you can into the ground, trying to bring the knees back closer together. So she ramps up 50, 60, 70% of her max effort, then 100% for 15 seconds. So she's contracting all the inner parts. Her adductors want to push together. So we strengthen the muscles right there. So from here, after 15 seconds of pails, immediately do the rails contraction by engaging the glutes as hard as you can and the abductors here, trying to lift off the knee off the ground. As it is your passive end range of motion, it's not possible, but try to do it. 15 seconds and then repeat it once or twice. Remember, the more input you give your central nervous system, the better it can adapt. So a 30-second stretch or a 40-second stretch will not do it for you and will not give you more passive range of motion. This time we did the pails and rails, so passive, we gain more passive range of motion, but with the active isometric components, you will gain strength and power in these newly acquired ranges of motion or in your current passive range of motion.
So one of our all-time favorites for the split are these straddle ups. So they look really fancy and they look really cool, but they're not worth anything if you skip the other exercises. So from here, we have our box, and depending on your level, you want the box to be higher or lower. So from here, you engage basically all the muscles involved for an active split, and you try to go into an anterior pelvic tilt and try to get actively off of the box into your straddle position. Okay, so this doesn't necessarily have to be a lower straddle position, but you want to be able to get the active part from sitting to standing, okay? And the better you get, the lower you can do, the lower you can have the box, and eventually you might be able to get off of the floor. So a couple of details here. You want to go for aim for about 6 reps for 3 to 4 sets. And really important is this should be hard, okay? So you want to tilt your pelvis as much as you can so that when you're in the straddle, you're in this position. So you see when you're seated, so you see this tilt here. When you're seated, you most likely won't have this tilt. But before you start, you initiate the tilting forward, and then you stand up. You want to use as little momentum as possible and use pure strength of all the muscles involved for the straddle. Also really important, have a quick isometric hold at the top in the straddle position to gain that strength to hold yourself up in the straddle. And then as you get better, you might be able to do it from the ground, sitting down, coming up, okay? So it's all a matter of consistency, and the better you get, the lower you can go, and the straddle will be yours in no time if you keep on practicing and do not skip the basics. So if you like this video, then please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. If you want more information about mobility or strength training, then visit our website. The link is in the description below.